For this lesson, you need to open the sample file Sales Report 6 from your Sample Files folder. If you look at the pages of a printed book, you'll notice that there's a different header and footer for odd and even pages. The first page of each chapter is also different. If this sample worksheet needed to be inserted into a publication similar to a book, you'd need to specify 3 different headers and footers. One for odd pages, one for even pages, and one for the first page. I'll begin by displaying Normal View using one of the 3 icons at the bottom right of the screen. This is Normal View, this is Page Layout View, and this is Page Break Preview View. But I want Normal View. Now I'm going to add a cover page to this report. A cover page is the first page of a report, and it generally consists of a blank piece of paper with a title printed on it. So let's begin by making some space for the cover page by inserting 5 blank rows above row 1. You learnt how to do this in lesson 3.1. So I select 5 blank rows, right-click in the selected area, and then click Insert from the shortcut menu. This blank space will contain the information that will be printed on my cover page. So I want a page break after it. In other words, a horizontal page break above row 6. You learnt how to do this in lesson 7.5. I click in cell A6, then Page Layout on the ribbon, in the Page Setup group, Breaks, and Insert Page Break. And you can see that a grey line has appeared above row 6, indicating that this is where the page will break. Now let's make space for the title by merging and centering cells A2 to J2. You learnt how to do this in lesson 4.6. So I select cells A2 to J2, then click Home on the ribbon, in the alignment group Merge and Center, and cells A2 to J2 have now merged into one large cell, and any text typed will be centered within this cell. So now I'll type a title for my report. I'll make it Sales Report for First Quarter 2008, and I'll press the Enter key. Now I'll apply a style to my title, using the skills you learned in lesson 4.9. I'll click on cell A2, Home on the ribbon, Styles group, Cell Styles to bring up the Cell Styles gallery, and I'll apply the title style. Now I'd like a subtitle for my cover page to appear in cells A3 to J3. So once again, I'll select cells A3 to J3, Home tab on the ribbon, in the alignment group, Merge and Center, and for my subtitle text, I'll type Private and Confidential. And I'll also apply a style to cell A3. So I'll click on cell A3, Home tab on the ribbon, Styles group, Cell Styles to bring up the Cell Styles gallery, and this time I'll use the style Heading 4. Now let's think about how the cover page will appear. At the moment, the title will appear at the very top of the cover page, but perhaps I'd like it to appear further down the cover page, so I'll make row 1 a lot taller, and that will bring the title down the page. Let's now see how the cover page will look with a print preview. So I'll click File on the ribbon, Print on the left-hand bar, and I can see the preview in the right-hand page. Let's zoom in by clicking the Zoom to Page button at the bottom right of the screen. I can see that the cover page looks reasonably good, but it's being spoiled by the headers and footers. You don't normally have a header and a footer on a cover page. So I'd like to remove the header and footer from the cover page, but still have headers and footers on the other pages in my report. To do that, I'll return to Excel by clicking the Back button. Then I'll change the view to Page Layout View by clicking the Page Layout View button at the bottom right of the screen, and I'll click in the Page Header area on the first page. Notice that the Header and Footer Tools Design tab has now appeared on the ribbon. And there's an options group to the right of the Design tab, and that contains the option Different First Page. So I'll check the Different First Page checkbox, and you can see that the header and footer have now been removed from the cover page. But there's still a header and footer on the other pages in the report. Let's do a quick print preview to prove that's the case. That's File on the ribbon, Print on the left-hand bar, and I can see that the cover page is now exactly what I want. But when I move to the second page, I still have a header and a footer. As we discussed earlier, if you're going to print this report on both sides of the printed paper, you'll often want a different header and footer for each side of the page. Let's return to Excel now and see if we can implement that. So I'll click the Back button at the top of the page. Once again, I'll click in the Header and Footer area to bring back the Header and Footer Tools Design tab. Then I'll click on the Design tab to display the ribbon. And notice that in the Options group there's also a Different Odd and Even Pages option. I'll check that now, and you can see that the header and footer have now been removed from the second printed page of the report, and Even Page Header has appeared at the top left of the header area. If I now scroll down to the footer area and then click in the left-hand part of the footer area, you can see that there's also an Even Page Footer. If I now scroll down to the third page of the printed report, an odd page, and click to the left of the header area, you can see that I now have the ability to specify a different odd page header. And if I scroll down to the footer area and click in the left-hand part of the footer area, you can see that I also have the ability to specify a different odd page footer. As this is the third page of the printed report, and hence an odd page. While a cover page is useful in all reports, the different odd and even page headers will only improve the presentation of reports that will be printed on both sides of the paper and then bound. All that remains for this lesson is to save your work, and I'm going to save with the new name Sales Report 7. And as usual, I'll save to the folder above my sample files folder. I click the Save button, and you've now completed Lesson 7.9. Specify different headers and footers for the first, odd and even pages.